Joining me now is Roger Stone to respond to the release of the JFK files. 80,000 of them released. Are there more to be released? Are we getting everything? What has he seen? Anything new that is of interest to him? Don't forget, Roger is the one that wrote, I think, the quintessential book on the topic. It's over in my library there. The man who killed Kennedy. You should read it. Joining me now is Roger Stone. Hey, Roger, welcome back to Brandon House Live. Thanks for being with us.
Brandon, great to be with you.
Great to have you with us. All right, so is there anything that jumps out? I have some screenshots I'd like to ask you about, but first, what do you make of the 80,000? Because I know you've probably read all 80,000 pages by now, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, first of all, I think not everything that's going to be released has been released. But from the beginning, I pointed out that the president's order only addressed those documents that are in the JFK assassination document archive. So I believe that there are still documents at the State Department, the Defense Department, the FBI, the CIA, the IRS that may be germane to the Kennedy assassination. From the beginning, all I really expected was to further cement my belief that the Central Intelligence Agency is but one of the entities involved in the murder of John Kennedy. As you know, the thesis of my book is that the main plotter of this, I hate this word, but this conspiracy is the man who had the most to gain, Lyndon Baines Johnson. At the time, he was under investigation in two of the biggest corruption scandals in American history, the Bobby Baker scandal. Baker was his right-hand man, the Secretary of the Senate, basically the bag man in a series of epic bribes, and the Billy Sol Estes scandal. Billy Sol Estes was a flamboyant wheeler dealer who Johnson had arranged to get multi-million-dollar agricultural contracts that were fraudulent, but who was kicking back to Johnson. Attorney General Robert Kennedy had begun telling intimates that LBJ would not only be dumped from the 64 ticket, but would be prosecuted for corruption. It was Johnson who persuaded JFK to go to Dallas. It was Johnson who insisted that the motorcade go through Dealey Plaza in violation of the Secret Service manual rules. The presidential limousine is not supposed to come to a full stop ever, but it did on that day. There's a number of other violations. But that is not to say that Johnson acted alone. The Central Intelligence Agency, in these recent disclosures, it is proven that they knew about Oswald and his background far earlier than they say. Yet the documents that I have seen seem to be designed to cement what I continue to believe is a false narrative. That is, that Lee Harvey Oswald shot and killed President John F. Kennedy. If that's so, Brandon, why does Oswald have no nitrate burns, no powder burns on his chest or his arms or his hands? They want us to believe that he fired a $26 World War II vintage Italian Army carbine, yet he has no powder burns. Not possible. Beyond that, everything here is fragmentary. We learned a couple things. I knew them. That, for example, John F. Kennedy was opposed to Israel having nuclear weapons, and he was insisting that Israel file AIPAC as a foreign agent. That does not prove that Israel was involved in the assassination. That is a conclusion that some have reached. I have not seen yet any solid documentation of that. I've only seen the claim. So I think it's a mistake to jump to conclusions, but I've seen nothing that would change my mind about the narrative that I laid out in my 2013 New York Times bestselling book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. By the way, to get that book, if you're interested, go to themanwhokilledkennedy.com, themanwhokilledkennedy.com.
And you guys should get it. It's an excellent book. So as I was going through some of these, it does seem as though the paperwork was loaded up to paint Oswald as the guy who did it. So part of the problem as you go through these things, people are saying, oh, the conclusions are pretty much, I asked Grok yesterday, Grok said, nothing's really changed. It seems like it was just Oswald. Well, I think the papers were and the files were doctored up so that everybody would come to this conclusion. But yet then here's this one right here. This one says Oswald was a poor shot when he tried target firing in the USSR. So we're to believe that a guy that was a poor shot actually got off those rounds?
As you know, Brandon, I believe that the shooter from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository building is not Lee Harvey Oswald, but Malcolm Mac Wallace. Why do I say this? Well, first of all, Wallace's fingerprints are found on the windowsill and also on the cardboard boxes that form the so-called crow's nest. At least 6 eyewitnesses tell either the FBI or the Dallas police that they see a man who meets the description of Malcolm Mac Wallace, who worked for Lyndon Johnson, in the window, middle-aged, heavy-set, balding, wearing glasses. At least one man, Richard Carr, sees a man who meets Wallace's description running out of the Texas School Book Depository building shortly after Kennedy was shot. A second man, Loy Factor, a Native American, comes forward and says that he was on the 6th floor, that he had met Wallace at a country fair. Wallace had watched him win a shooting contest and had recruited him as a backup shooter in the event that Wallace lost his nerve. Now, as you may have heard, just weeks ago, an audio tape was produced by the grandson of Billy Sol Estes, the Johnson crony I mentioned earlier, who went to prison for corruption. And in that audio, recorded in the 1960s, you can hear Cliff Carter, the chief political operative for Lyndon Johnson, and Billy Sol Estes discussing the fact that Johnson had recruited Mac Wallace to shoot John Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963. So I guess I would go to what you just said and say, look, for 63 years, these documents have been withheld from the American public. Why do we believe that documents that proves anything other than the false conclusion that Oswald shot Kennedy would have been kept? Why would they not have been destroyed?
And now here's another one that's saying that Oswald went September, October 63, Lee Harvey Oswald approached the Soviet embassy in Mexico City in an attempt to get a visa, allowing him to return to the USSR. Is there any indication, and I think there is, that he was actually working for the FBI and or working for the CIA? I think there's pay stubs or something related to that. How do we know this guy wasn't really actually a patriotic individual fighting communism, was dipped as a communist, passing out pro-communist literature on the streets in Louisiana, I think New Orleans, because he was being dipped and painted as a communist sympathizer and promoter in order to infiltrate these groups? Doesn't this give more impetus to that?
Yes, I think you've hit it right on the head. First of all, in the first tranche of documents that were ordered released by President Trump back in 2017, we have Oswald's 1099 from the FBI. So he is most definitely an intelligence asset. I also believe that he went to the foreign language school that the CIA runs in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, to learn to speak Russian. As you know, at a certain point, he renounced his citizenship and he moved to Russia, and then he seamlessly returns to the United States, which would be very extraordinary if he were not a U.S. government asset. It is not actually physically possible for him to have been the shooter. I say that because he is witnessed by a Dallas police officer on the 2nd floor in the cafeteria in the Texas School Book Depository building, minutes after Kennedy is shot. And that means that he would have had to shoot Kennedy. He was not a good shot. Malcolm Wallace, by the way, was an expert shot based on his U.S. Marine Corps record. He would have had to hide the rifle and run down four staircases, a wooden staircase, by the way. At least one witness on the staircase during that time neither sees nor hears neither sees nor hears Oswald. It is virtually impossible for Oswald to have been the shooter. I think the documents we have seen are designed to leave that impression, but why would we believe that they are complete at a minimum?
Okay, and then we see one that says, I guess, that the CIA was monitoring him at least 59 days before JFK was assassinated. Again, is this more just confusing the paperwork in the file to build the narrative?
But we also know that a man claiming he was Lee Harvey Oswald went around to the private airport in Dallas to various air charter services to inquire about chartering a plane to Cuba. The problem was that when those proprietors were shown a picture of Lee Harvey Oswald, they said, no, that's not the man who came in using that name. So, look, I think Oswald is exactly what he says he is, a patsy. Mm-hmm. When they bring him out in public, what does he say? I'm a patsy. I didn't shoot anybody. I believe he is telling the truth. I think that Oswald is an asset who believes that he's been sent to Dallas, that he's been positioned in the Texas School Book Depository building in order to thwart an assassination attempt against Kennedy, when in fact he's being set up to take the fall.
Do you know about John Garrett Underhill Jr.?
I do not.
Okay. He supposedly, according to this release, is, well, a guy that had been in the CIA. This was a memo July 67. The day after the assassination, Gary Underhill left Washington in a hurry. Late in the evening, he showed up at a home of a friend's in New Jersey. He was very agitated. A small clique within the CIA was responsible for the assassination, he confided, and he was afraid for his life and probably would have to leave the country. Less than 6 months later, Underhill was found shot to death in his Washington apartment. The coroner ruled it a suicide. J. Garrett Underhill had been an intelligence agent during World War II and was considered an authority on limited warfare and small arms, a researcher and writer on military affairs. He was on a first-name basis with many of the top brass in the Pentagon. He was also on intimate terms with a number of high-ranking CIA officials. He was one of the agency's unpeople, as they called him, who performed special assignments. At one time, he had been a friend of Samuel Cummings of Inter-Armco, the arms broker that numbers among its customers the CIA, and ironically, Klein Sporting Goods of Chicago, from whence the mail-order gun was purchased by Oswald. Wow. Apparently, he also shot himself behind the ear, which is a weird place to shoot yourself.
Not only that, but he shot himself behind the left ear, but he was right-handed.
Okay, so you do now know who I'm talking about.
Now that I have seen the full thing, I'm familiar with this. I read it last night. Again, there's a number of contradictory things that we have already seen in the documents that have been released. More interestingly, late yesterday afternoon, there were various reports that the document release would be delayed for review by the Justice Department due to quote-unquote national security concerns. So that was of immediate concern to me. I wondered whether this was going to play out kind of like another Epstein situation. And then, frankly, I think due largely to Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, they began fulfilling the president's commitment to release what they have. But again, I wonder, since the president's order specifically addresses the John F. Kennedy assassination documents archive, whether all other departments of the U.S. government were ordered to review their documents, such as the State Department, the Defense Department, the IRS, the FBI, the CIA, and to turn over those documents. I think what we're seeing here is designed to underline what I still believe is a false narrative, that Oswald shot Kennedy 3 shots, all from behind, shooting, unaided, not a member of a conspiracy. Interestingly enough, recently, Paramount released a documentary called What the Parkland Doctors Saw.
Oh, it's so amazing. Absolutely amazing.
compelling. The point of which, of course, is the doctors saw wounds in President Kennedy that were consistent with his being shot from the front and the back. That in turn means multiple shooters, and that in turn means a conspiracy.
Is there fake paperwork floating around out there as well? Are people gumming up X with fake things like Robert F. Kennedy or JFK Jr. called out Joe Biden for being a traitor in the United States before he was killed? Is some of this fake? Is there fake stuff going out there?
That has been out there for a long time. I actually believe it is genuine.
Really?
I don't think it's fake, but it was public long before its inclusion, assuming it was included in this release, this recent tranche of documents. Look, again, going back to 2017, we have a memo from J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI director, to President Lyndon Johnson, saying that the KGB, Russian intelligence, has conducted their own independent investigation into Kennedy's murder and have reached the conclusion that, well, Lyndon Johnson himself is the main conspirator. That was released in 2017. You notice you didn't read about that in the front pages of the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal.
How do you think that the FBI director? Do you think he was part of this, or what do you think was going on?
Well, we know this. In 2017, when I urged President Trump to release everything, let me back up a little further. In 1994, the Congress passed the Kennedy Assassinations Records Act that mandated release of all of these documents in 2017 unless the president at that time objected. I urged President Trump to lodge no objection and to allow all this material to be published then. In the end, he released about 80% of the material, holding back about 20%, and then subsequently said that he did so because the CIA director, Mike Pompeo, argued that full release would expose the methods and sources of the CIA. Now, that in itself tells you something. If the CIA director doesn't want the documents released, it's because they do not reflect well on the CIA. As far as sources are concerned, I don't think there's anyone still alive involved in the Kennedy assassination. One of the last Secret Service agents, Clint Hill, who dissembles very extensively in his book about what happened that day, by the way, died only recently. Yet, as you know, only months ago, a retired a retired Secret Service agent in his 90s came forward to say that he had found a bullet in the back seat of the limousine in which Kennedy was shot, and he had taken it to Parkland Hospital and put it on the stretcher next to Kennedy's body. Somehow that bullet ends up on the stretcher containing Governor John Connally. Again, it puts the lie to the whole so-called single bullet theory.
How about this one? An interview with Alan Belmont, Assistant FBI Director from May 6, 64. On page 27, he questioned whether Ruby and Oswald worked together, and then a bunch of pages are missing, says this person on X. Full PDF is only 52 pages, but the interview goes on to page 473. So what do you know about this?
This is one of the, there's a number of citations of missing documents. There's a conversation between Lyndon Johnson and CIA Director John McCloy. That document is completely missing in its entirety. It would be very educational for the American people to know what was said. I think that the controversy over who really shot John F. Kennedy and why is going to continue to rage after all these documents are out, because, again, I think that the examination of the Kennedy assassination depends very, very much on the point of view of the person who examines it. So, for example, the House Select Committee on Assassinations that was formed in the late 1970s to re-examine John Kennedy's assassination was staffed entirely by people whose expertise was in the area of organized crime. And indeed, the bugging of the jail cell of Chicago gangster CMG and Kana, both before and after the Kennedy assassination only confirms the involvement of the mob. The Parkland doctor's film, I think, proves the point that there are multiple shooters. Notice the government returning to the now, I think, discredited narrative that Lee Harvey Oswald is the shooter and that he acted alone.
And that seems to be what this is partly about. So in closing, Roger, do you believe there are more files that will be released, and do you believe they'll reveal more, or is this more the same if anything gets released?
Well, first of all, we haven't even had a chance to parse through the 80,000 documents that are already supposed to be released. I don't believe they released 80,000 documents yesterday. I think they released about 20,000, and we're just now scraping the surface. And their search function is not all that capable. There are certain search terms that don't seem to work at all. So at the end of the day, after 80,000 documents, I'm not sure we're going to know any more than we actually know today. I will stand by all my research in my book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. I still believe that you can get a copy by going there. And it'll be signed, by the way. If you choose to buy it someplace else, I urge you to get the paperback version because it has 3 additional chapters, much superior to the hardcover. But I stand behind the theory that I put forward in that book. It's very, very heavily footnoted and documented.
All right, 2 more things. Tell me about your new radio show.
So at 77 WABC, I am doing a new radio show from 8 to 9 every weekday. And then on Sundays from 3 to 5. And now it doesn't matter where you are in the country, you can listen to it by going to WABCradio.com. WABCradio.com. Eventually, I will sync it with what was my daily show at StoneZone.com. And as you know, we hope to be able to provide that to Worldview too. We're working on that.
Excellent. All right, and then final question. How is President Trump's administration going, despite all these judges that now want to tell the executive CEO of the executive branch how to run the government? How do you think things are going overall?
I guess I would call it judges gone wild. I mean, these judges are weighing in on issues that are not justiciable, where they have no authority. The President of the United States has certain inherent executive authority based on the Constitution. So a federal judge cannot order the President of the United States to not return violent terrorists or other illegal criminals to their country of origin. No judge has such authority, as Stephen Miller, I think, quite effectively said. Notice that you don't see anybody screaming about a constitutional crisis as they were, say, during Watergate. But these judges are acting well beyond their authority. Remains to be seen what the administration does about this. I don't know why the left is so hysterical. All Donald Trump is doing is exactly what he said he would do through every month of his campaign.
Oh, and by the way, I do have to ask one more. Was there anything so far in the dump that ties the CIA to the break-in at Watergate?
I have not seen that, but there were documents declassified late last year that showed beyond any question that the Central Intelligence Agency knew about the Watergate break-in in advance. And we know that at least 4 of the 8 Watergate burglars, at least 2 of whom, I think 3 of whom, happened just coincidentally be on the ground on Dealey Plaza on November 22nd, 1963. But at least 4 of the burglars were still on the payroll of the CIA and reporting to their handlers during the time of the Watergate break-in.
And Kash Patel is on record saying that when these are all released, there'll be some people that are not happy. And I don't know what he meant by that, but I was wondering, is he talking about family members that are still living, whose family members may be implicated? And I was thinking about maybe George H. Bush.
Again, the actions of George H.W. Bush are very strange. I mean, no one who is of our age doesn't remember where they were when they heard that John F. Kennedy was killed. But George H.W. Bush said for 30 years he couldn't remember where he was. Well, I know where he was. he was in Dallas, Texas. That's where he was. At least that's where he was in the morning. Then I do think that he was in Tyler, Texas for a speech. Remember, he was launching his campaign for the U.S. Senate in 1964. And then he tells the FBI station chief in Houston, he clearly calls him immediately after he learns that Kennedy has been shot, I think for purposes of establishing an alibi. But he tells him that he is returning to Houston that night, but he doesn't return to Houston. He returns to Dallas and then only returns to Houston the following morning. So at a minimum, his statements and his actions on that day are suspicious. I've always wondered about the fact that there are 4 presidents in Dallas that day: Kennedy, Johnson, Richard Nixon, former vice president who's in Dallas to give a speech to a Pepsi-Cola bottlers convention, and of course, George H.W. Bush, who doesn't seem to remember that he was there.
Who goes on to become the CIA director.
Yes, but that is much later. I do think this is one of the mistakes that his critics make of saying that he covered this up. He becomes CIA director much later, 1976, and it really is a way that Don Rumsfeld, Gerald Ford's chief of staff, gets Bush out of the way of a potential vice presidential nomination. That's because Rumsfeld himself has aspirations to be vice president.
Wow, the history that this man has in his head is overwhelming. StoneZone.com, StoneZone.com. To get the book and have it signed by Roger, go to themanwhokilledkennedy.com. Roger, always great to have you with us. Thanks for making time. I know you're in high demand right now with the release of these files.
Thank you, Brandon. God bless you.
You too. Roger Stone checking in. Check it out, themanwhokilledkennedy.com. There you go, folks. Another long format interview with no commercial break. Do you appreciate that? Do you want to keep this format going? I need your support. WorldviewFoundation.com. This is one of our biggest sponsors that helps us push out free programming and not taking commercial breaks, but being more interested in information, news and information and content, and again, making the 24/7 stream available for free where many people put it behind a paywall. Not only that, guess what? Tomorrow, this segment will be posted up online for you to watch again, or for the first time, or share with friends, free, where it could immediately go behind a paywall and say, oh, you didn't catch it live? I'm sorry, too bad. You'll have to join to get behind the paywall. We don't do that to you because our foundation comes along and helps us with some of the cost of pushing it out for education and public service and ministry broadcast. Okay? We need your support. I need more people. Listen now. I need more of you to do an automatic monthly contribution. I can see how many are signed up for automatic contributions, and I need to see that number go up so that I know every month, okay, good. At least we got that minimum coming in. I don't know what else is going to happen. You know, other people give randomly by online or check, and thank you for that. But at least I know these people are signed up for automatic contributions. That takes some stress off us, okay? So we need you to go there and sign up, give $10, $20 a month, $50 a month, wherever you can afford at worldviewfoundation.com. Please, some of you consider signing up for an automatic contribution. Now, if you don't want to do that, we appreciate your contribution, however you give or whether how often you give. We appreciate it. But if you can do a monthly automatic, please consider setting that up at worldviewfoundation.com. By the way, they have updated a little bit more our About page. Our team has worked very hard putting together our history, and I hope you will send this around to your family and friends. worldviewtube.com/about. worldviewtube.com/about. I've been doing this 35 years this year, and I hope you'll share this because I think it gives us a lot of credibility to show that this isn't something we're new to. Anybody can get a microphone and camera and start a podcast, and God bless them. It's a free country. But a lot of these folks today, they don't have any background, scholarship, research, writing books. And I don't use ghostwriters. I didn't use ghostwriters for my books, folks. My wife can tell you that. My editor can tell you that. I labored on the research and writing of these books. And I believe it gives us credibility. It's a resume. And I want you to send it around to your family and friends and say, look, the guy that's running this Worldview Tube has been doing this 35 years. Go look at his track record. This is a news outlet you can trust. So I want you to check into it. Look at that beautiful shot of our studio, by the way. You guys all want to know what it looks like offset. There you go. That's what it looks like. No, notice Dolly's not sleeping on her bed right there during the picture, but she is sleeping on her bed right now with her notorious position of her head hanging off, which I still don't understand why anyone wants to sleep like that, but she does. And she sleeps like that at night, by the way. She sleeps with her head hanging off because my wife and I have the adjustable bed because I sleep more propped up. She likes to have her head hanging down in that crack for some reason, even at night. There you go. But anyway, that's the picture. Here's the picture of our studio, off camera, offset, if you want to get an idea what it's like. Just continue flowing through here. You find out all about our history. We've got some new things that we put up there. I love this one. This one got sent to me through Michael Reagan shortly after I was a guest host of Michael Reagan's show. And that's hanging in my office from President Reagan. Judge Joe Brown in studio with us. Me interviewing Steve Bannon. There's my vest with a note from Jimmy Kimmel. So there you go. That's of interest to me. It's kind of whole thing's kind of fascinating. Here's Roger and I having dinner in my home, at my house. There you go. So you can just check all this stuff out. Okay. Let's see. Scroll down a little more. We've added in some more of the concerts and music. This is something I had completely forgotten about. This is where I conducted an orchestra back in what year this was. I had forgotten all about this. This is for our Ozarks Worldview weekend, and we had a big time. So anyway, there's all kinds of stuff there. Of course, there's the fam. There's the fam of the president. So send this around to your family and friends. Here's some pictures of my wife. Here she is right before she was about to host a big event at our house. And here we are hosting. You guys want to see? Here we are in our honeymoon. My wife saw that this morning. She said, "Man alive, we were babies." Like, yeah, I know. Weren't we though? Yeah. Melissa said, "I look a little bit like Logan." I said, "No, the other way around. Logan looks a little bit like you." So yeah, there is some. You ought to see pictures of Melissa when she was a little girl. She looks like Logan, but with long hair. Doesn't she, Logan? Even Logan says, "That looks like me." It looks just like Logan's pictures at that age, except for long hair. It looks like Logan wearing a wig. So he definitely is his mother's son, no doubt about it. I love that one too, because we do a lot of laughing around here. We don't laugh as much on the air as we probably should. Here's our first Christmas card that we put out. All right, I got to stop going down memory lane here. I'm sure most of you could care less. But anyway, check it all out. It'll, again, send it around to your family and friends. Let them see the history that we've been up to, what we've been doing. And I'm hoping it'll give folks an opportunity to say, you know what, these guys have been doing this a while. We should definitely tune in and listen. These guys are not newbies. They've been doing this a while, and we ought to tune in. So send that around, worldviewtube.com/about. And remember, by the way, whenever you run into something like this right here, that means there's a video behind it. You can watch the video of that dude threatening us. There he is filming his Quran and then panning the crowd while I speak. And then he goes on to sit out in his truck and make all kinds of threats at us and flash his weapons and telling me to be afraid and be terrified and all that. So anyway, nuts, huh?
Terrified.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So whenever you see a arrow like that, that means there's a video behind it. So check it out. All right, worldviewtube.com/about, worldviewtube.com/about. Send it around to your family and friends. Invite them to listen after you share a little bit about who we are and the credibility I think that we have that is worthy of their listenership and viewership.